Hi, everybody. So I just wanted to hop on before we get to the actual video because unfortunately there was a death yesterday on a set down in New Mexico. So I just wanted to acknowledge Helena's death, as well as remind everyone that there are resources in the description box that include crew safety hotlines, as well as various articles detailing what is going on currently with the IATSE negotiations, too. So everybody stay safe. And yeah, just wanted to say that this was recorded before that happened. This was also recorded before some of the details about the union deal were released by IATSE. And yeah, here goes episode 0. Record on this computer. There we go. Now it told us. All right. Hi, guys. I guess we're calling this an ad hoc filmmaker discussion, so we can talk about labor issues going on in the film industry right now, as well as get some clarity amongst ourselves about what's happening with the IATSE contract negotiations. I'm Danni McClellan. I'm a writer-director and an alumni of Chapman University. I've also worked in the film industry for almost 15 years now. Although I've never been a union member, I have been a PA and a assistant director. So that's kind of my perspective on things. If you guys want to introduce yourselves as well. And we do have an audience member here, Greg, who might chime in every once in a while, but he's not going to be recording with us just yet. Patrick?
All right. I'm Aoife. I'm a costume designer. I work primarily in non-union. I do sometimes work on union shoots, but most of my year is spent in non-union. And so I'm not in either of the unions for my department.
My name is Patrick. I am a director. I ran an independent production company on the East Coast for 8 years before relocating here to LA. And yeah, there's less union shoots happening on the East Coast. So especially at the budget level I was working with, so they didn't come up too often, but they were always off on the fringes of other productions happening around me.
Yeah, so this is kind of a hard topic to even know where to start on because it's so massive. So let me recap just for the benefit of us exactly what the status is right now. So let me pull up. So right now, the strike of 60,000 IATSE crew members is averted because over the weekend they were able to come to a 3-year basic agreement with the AMPTP, that is the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. That membership includes organizations like Warner Brothers, Netflix, Amazon, Disney, and basically every other major studio. The basic agreement is what actually covers only the 13 Hollywood locals. Those negotiations have been going on for months, and right before the Sunday deadline set by the union, they were able to come up with this contract that the president, Matt Loeb, called a quote unquote Hollywood ending. Now, it's really worth pointing out right away that the basic agreement, like I just said, covers the 13 Hollywood locals, which means that the other expired contract was known as the Area Standards Agreement. That covers everything outside of New York and Los Angeles and covers thousands of members. That contract has not been agreed upon. And in fact, those workers technically were able to start striking today, but did not. So that's kind of where things get really confusing and why I wanted to open up this conversation. Hey, Kylie.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Sorry, I have not eaten since 10 a.m. and I just got out of my table read, so I had to shove a healthy choice meal in my face.
That's amazing. You're totally fine. I'm literally just like, we just started recording and I was just rehashing kind of the status of everything right now. So yeah,
Awesome.
I was basically just saying that I'm kind of in awe of what's happening because the Hollywood locals have a basic agreement that they can vote on, but the rest of the country has just kind of been stuck in limbo with their contracts because it's not, the membership isn't quite as unified across the rest of the country. So they could and should be striking right now. As far as I understand, there was no extension made on the strike either. So, I think much like the membership, all of us are kind of left wondering, like, why things are happening the way that they're happening right now. But what question, Patrick, like, I'm sure
Yeah,
this
so I
raises a
think the
lot
one off the top of
questions.
the head, the top of most of the constituents' heads are, does this agreement mean that the strike is over? And if not, what will it take to have the two sides reconcile?
So I can only speak for the Los Angeles. I can't speak for the outside of LA
Yeah.
stuff. So right now the strike isn't not on the table, but it's also not happening. So actually a lot of sets were really weird today because most crews in Los Angeles thought that they were going to be striking. So when they clocked out on Friday or Saturday, they did not expect to be going back to work on Monday. They thought that they were gonna be, off picketing or just getting a little bit of rest. And so I've had a number of friends messaging about how like Crafty is empty and there's lots of tasks that should have gotten done that didn't get done because nobody expected to come back in. Right now, so they're not striking because the agreement was reached and the motion picture, the producers came and like agreed to what had originally been on the table.
Yeah.
The strike might still happen because what was being asked for might change. A lot of people in IATSE right now aren't super happy with what was agreed to because what they wanted was more. Like they wanted a 12-hour turnaround, not a 10-hour turnaround, more safe conditions, to do away with Fraturday work. And what they got was higher pay, which is fantastic, and like an official 10-hour turnaround, and several like very important things. Progress was definitely made, but a lot of people still aren't super happy because it's not everything that they need. But it is what IATSE went to the table asking for.
Yeah.
Because that's all that they expect. Like they didn't even expect to get that really. They expected to have to strike. And so now everybody is a little bit unsure about what the next step is going to be because they have to now sort of check in with the members and see like, are you going to vote no on this agreement? And we go back and change it, or does this make enough people happy? A lot of people want to keep going right now because they have a lot of momentum. Having the 90% of people vote for it a week or so ago was like really
that
huge.
voter turnout is incredible. And then to have such a big number of the membership not only vote, but vote yes on the strike authorization, that alone feels incredibly historic.
That's basically as close to unanimous as you can get with something that is as large a body as IATSE. Like that was really shocking. And so a lot of people are like, well, right now, while the ball is rolling, let's just keep pushing it. Let's get what we really want and need. And a lot of people are like, let's take the deal that's on the table. This is already more than we expected. This is already now giving a actual living wage to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so it's a little divisive right now, and people are unsure.
Yeah, I have the numbers on those wage increases. So the lowest hourly wages were for writers assistants, script coordinators, and assistant production coordinators and art department coordinators. Going to point that out, all traditionally female crew positions, although that has changed substantially over the years, but traditionally, especially art department coordinators, has often been women. Those minimum rates were as low as $16 per hour, so barely minimum wage for Los Angeles, and they are going to be increasing to $26 per hour over the next 3 years. That will push their pay above the $19.35 hourly wage, which is the living wage for a single person calculated without children, according to data.
Yeah.
So that is a huge deal. Like I think, that's a 62% increase in the lowest paid members in the union. And that, I mean, I think that does need to be acknowledged a bit more, how historic that is and how important it is. But I can see why there's the controversy that when everyone realized how much camaraderie there was, how much solidarity there was, and how angry and hurt and frustrated people were during the pandemic that their safety wasn't being considered, it's completely understandable that a lot of the membership wants to keep pushing beyond what they originally wanted a couple months ago when these negotiations started, and they had stalled out. I just from a safety standpoint, 14-hour days are still allowed in this contract. Like Fee mentioned, a lot of people already had 10-hour turnarounds. And that's really, once you add in commuting, that's still somebody getting very, very little sleep on a very long work day. And it's, what I've seen online, a lot of members still want to keep pushing.
Yeah.
For those reasons.
And I would say for the hours, I'm always keeping in the back of my mind. So a 14-hour day for a lot of people still is going to be a 16 or 17-hour day. ADs are going to still have to do work when they go home. Producers are still going to be fielding questions when they go home. Line producers are still going to be getting calls. Costumers are going to be doing laundry.
Yep.
Art is going to be swapping out things. Like, there's always going to be more hours that aren't technically a part of the set hours. And so they're going to be paid OT for it, but they're not going to get that sleep time.
Yeah. And that's really, I think, what a lot of the frustration right now comes down to is yes, there are some great wage increases here. There's also additional increases in meal penalties, overtime, things like that. But at the end of the day, increasing meal penalties for anyone listening, and for Patrick, I'm not sure how familiar you are with them. Meal penalties occur every half hour after a lunch break is not called, which the theory behind that, and also behind overtime or paying people money if they have a forced call and they have to come in before their turnaround is completed, is to deter producers and studios from shortchanging people on their lunch breaks or on their turnaround hours. But ultimately, what winds up happening is it's cheaper for them to pay and cause abusive hours than it is to add an extra day to the schedule. So it's kind of a catch-22 on that end of things. Is, the wage increases are really important, but where's the line? Where's the line of money versus safety and making sure that the crew knows making sure, the studios are treating crew like human beings that are capable of having home lives, or even just, I mean, some of the times I almost never ate dinner when I was a PA or an AD because I was too tired. Like, just like you said, V, like I was always working, in my case, off the clock or longer hours than the set crew was, especially as a PA. I don't want to play the game of us comparing our longest work weeks because it's honestly just too depressing at this point. And I think a lot of that information is already out there. I will put links in my YouTube channel to all the different crew sort of grassroots organizations that have popped up the last few months on Instagram and social media and stuff that are sharing those stories. So we don't have to repeat our trauma for the umpteenth time. Because that information is definitely out there. And I think there's other things we can talk about tonight that are a little more hopeful than that. Kylie, you have dealt with a lot of this stuff from the perspective of being a SAG member.
Yes. Before I go in on this, are we okay to like drink wine on this? Because I also poured me a glass. Thank God. Okay, because I needed to pour this before I talk about it. First off, let me take a lovely sip. This is a lovely canned wine I got at Ralph's.
Beautiful. I'm very jealous right now, actually.
Beautiful Underwood canned wine. So for those who don't know me, hi, my name's Kylie. They, them in the box. I have been a working actor in SAG-AFTRA for 18 years. God, I just did that math. That was awful. And I've also been a member of Equity for 10 years. I grew up in the industry. I joined SAG in 2004. I was a child actor. So I also was a member of, at one point, I was a member of SAG, AFTRA, and Equity. So I have that background. From 2019 to 2021, literally last month, I served both on union delegation at the 2019 convention and introduced a successful resolution that, due to the pandemic and some other things out of my control, has not yet been implemented. But I also served on 3 committees, 2 national, 1 local for SAG-AFTRA. And what I can say is, I commend everyone in IATSE. Danny, I almost interrupted you on the solidarity and the voting numbers that IATSE had, because SAG has never seen anything like that, even in the legacy. In this last election, we were lucky to get a national percentage of 27% of the entire membership.
Wow.
That's
low.
over 100. It is. And there are a lot of things that come into play on that. And about 160,000 people were eligible to vote in their locals and in national. And now that I'm not in the politics anymore, I can speak a little bit more off the record, which is great. So to back up, I got into the politics of the union because my dad, who passed away last summer, he was a labor attorney, and he was always mad that I was never going to become an attorney. So, you know, he loved my career and enjoyed my career, but he secretly wanted me to go into the family business. So when I got so fed up with my own union, and Equity has their qualms too, but I'm going to focus solely on SAG-AFTRA. Everybody gets mad when I just say SAG and forget AFTRA, and we'll get into that later. But
that's a whole thing. Yeah.
That is a whole, oh my God, that is a whole thing. But when I got into the politics of the union, I was so mad because I had friends who were failed by their union to the point where they were A-list names, they were star names, and they quit the business. They quit the industry because I have one friend who, she is now a musician full-time, as well as a director, a DGA director full-time. I grew up with her and we were child actors. She was on one series where she was a lead, not just like a series regular. She was a lead in the promos and everything. Like, you know, she was the driving force for this show. The network did not pay her for 13 months. And when, when she went to the union, they did not defend her. They did not go to the network and say, you have not paid our member for 13 months. And she also was having a really hard time with the sets as well. Not the crew, but her fellow cast members. There was just not a lot of safety involved, and she felt betrayed by her own union to the point where she quit the industry. And I wish that was the only person that had that same story. In 2019, I counted about 20 people I knew from all levels who quit acting because the union failed them. And that was one reason why I went guns blazing on it, because I was like, I have always been vocal and critical of my union, because I do think this is the thing that I think people forget. We are critical of the institutions that we love and need because we can all do better. Yeah. That is the thing I think people forget. And I criticize a lot of things because I know we can do better. I have seen it. I didn't even vote for the merger in 2011. I voted no on it because, and I mean, at that time, I was still very young. I don't want to give away how old I am now, because I still play college. Hi, I still play college.
You have the baby face.
I have the baby face. But I was comparing because I had worked after contracts and I worked SAG contracts, and I'm also a data dork. So I compare and contrast all my contracts, my residuals, my pay stubs, everything, because one, knowledge is power, and two, I would not be allowed to live in my house if I didn't know what was going on, just in general, not just because my dad was a labor attorney, just not knowing, you know? And so I really appreciate my parents teaching me that. And the wages almost instantly dropped the moment we merged, because what they did was for studio films, and also some moderate indie films, they went with the SAG contracts. For all of television, they deferred to AFTRA. So everybody's residuals got screwed super fast and super hard. And I had a chart and everything. And so that was one reason why I got into labor politics. Well, I got into the politics of it at a time where it was incredibly volatile. The pandemic had not yet started, but I served all during the pandemic, and that was very eye-opening. A lot of members felt betrayed by their own union because 12,000 people got kicked off the health plan in July.
I was about to say that. I had so many friends who, you know, are not name actors, are not anybody that's watching this would have ever heard of. You know, some of us are friends with them on Twitter and everything, but you know, a lot of my friends are stand-ins and just trying to get by and even make a living as in acting, and they all got booted from their health insurance. And those are the most vulnerable people to lose it, because they don't have, you know, residuals that are coming in that are big numbers. They're like 3 cents coming in. That can't help.
No, and they're also necessary.
Yeah.
The problem that I have with a lot of the way that people in the industry talk, like it even happened on Twitter on one of my threads, people got into arguing about like, well, my department has it worse than yours, mine does. Like, we're literally all necessary. If you try to imagine making a movie without extras, background stand-ins at all, it's ridiculous.
Second
like,
team.
What movie are you going to make?
Yeah, and the other thing that is really, this is something I want to disclaim something really quick. Couple of things before I go into this. There are 2 factions in SAG. One is Unite for Strength, Union Strong, USAN. The other is Membership First, Ideal New York, etc. I personally believe that is what's killing us, is that we have a 2-party system in this union. That being said, and I've been trying to recruit people to maybe become a 3rd party, be independent, but that unfortunately is not how you get elected into union positions in SAG-AFTRA. When I ran, I made it clear, I ran with Membership First here in Los Angeles, and I made it clear, I said, I just want you all to know, I fucking hate this. We can curse, right?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, good.
She asked that before we recorded too, and I'm like,
I always just drop an F-bomb, and then I'm like, oh my God, I didn't ask if this, like, that's the same thing with drinking. I was like, I don't want to, because, you know, people can get a little weird and a little on that. But okay, drinking and cursing, great.
This
I
is
can
us
definitely do that.
shooting the shit and hoping
Okay.
that we can provide resources and information for
Awesome.
filmmaking students like my friend Patrick and like all my friends at Chapman, and also just green people that are greener in the industry and trying to like know where to start.
Rad. So anyway, so membership first, I ran with membership first, and membership first was, they are the ones, it's really interesting to see where you get your news from and who says what, because as far as I know, and there's information that I cannot divulge yet, I witnessed it in 2019 of USAN and UFS rigging convention elections, electioneering. They cheated. They actually, several of the people who have served or are serving as vice presidents did not even get elected to convention. And in the bylaws state that if you want to be considered for a high position in executive board, you have to be at least elected to the convention. And that has not happened for several people, and there will be names that come out. So there's a lot of stuff behind closed doors. And going back to the health insurance thing, one of the things that membership first, and I definitely applaud them on being the light and the truth, and letting, when the news about the health insurance came out, membership first hosted these incredible town halls of actors who were just making ends meet, and they were about to lose their health insurance, and they were 5-6 hour long town halls of just people getting to talk. And I really think we need to do that more, just as a whole, just being able to air what's happening. But what people don't realize is that Ed Asner got kicked off of his health insurance.
Right. That was a big part
And
of the ad campaign that I saw for membership first.
Yeah.
was and Ed was part of the video that went around before he, sadly passed.
Yeah.
I was Ed Asner, right? It's
Yeah,
been one of those days. Okay.
I get trust me.
I remember thinking of the like incredibly sad irony of that, because it was so quick. It felt so quickly after the election for SAG that, there's this big ad campaign talking about him losing insurance, and then he's gone.
Yeah. And the thing is, the election was still in the throes of voting at that time when he passed. And I will say one of the best things was UFS, and I am going to shit talk UFS a little bit, because I have seen what they've done, and they've really, I will go off the record on that on another time, but some of the things I have seen is just, it's truly, it goes against the spirit of the labor movement from them. They tried to capitalize on Ed Asner's death by saying, we love Ed, and we hope, you will vote for us because he represented. And I'm just like, I sat in meetings with Mr. Asner, and he hated them. He genuinely, because he was a democratic socialist at heart, who was a true unionist, an old school unionist, he was president of SAG at one point.
Right. Yeah.
And it is really amazing to me. And also UFS and USAN and Union Strong, also in terms of the health insurance, played it off like this is something that happens because of the pandemic. Well, in another situation, and this is why I'm so jealous of IATSE, of it, and also WGA having their shit together. During SAG's last negotiation for the TV theatrical contract, I'm so sorry, I voted no on it, and I'll get into why on that and why we shouldn't have caved. 3 of the staff members at the time on the chief negotiating committee are also on the trustees of the union health plan. There are 40 trustees on the union health plan. 20 of them are union appointed. Unite for Strength and their allies have been in the stronghold of the union since the merger. So clearly it's their problem, but also the 3 staff members who knew apparently that the health plan was going under did not alert the negotiating committee. They did not tell them. And somebody who I highly respect. He's been a member of SAG for 50 years, and I consider him my mentor and is an incredible person. The wonderful Mr. David Jolliffe, who, if you're watching, please go look him up. He is he is now the LA local board first vice president. He's truly incredible. I highly respect his opinion. Whatever he says, I do. Basically, in labor politics, he's like Santa Claus, but incredibly like union man Santa Claus.
Love it.
Yeah, like if Santa Claus were to unionize his elves, that would be David Jolliffe. You know what I mean? So, he was just like, I was the head of the negotiating committee with Gabrielle Carteris. Why did they not tell us that the health plan was in trouble and that 12,000 people were going to get their plans canceled? And there was a new threshold of 26,500 by October 1st, 2020. How many people worked in the pandemic before the pandemic shut everything down? How many people made $26,500 in SAG earnings before the world shut down? Because I didn't. I sure as shit didn't. And
put that in perspective
residuals,
because my AD days are a little out of date in terms of like what is the prevailing day player 1 day rate right now. Last I knew it was like under $1,000 a day.
I think they might have finally gotten it to 1,000. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, and I apologize on that. I want to say it's in like the $995 for a basic co-star.
So like a
usually,
day player doesn't make a ton of money. Like if you break that down into hourly and you're making like $995, 12 plus hours a day, that's not, the impression that most of this country has of working actors and actresses. There's so many of those like shady like gossip websites that guess what basically character actors are making on TV shows, and they always think those people's net worths are like $5 million, $10 million. Those people, I guarantee, don't even own homes in Los Angeles because they can't afford an $800,000 starter house.
No, and actually, I'll give you an anecdote on that, Danny. I Googled myself to see what people think.
Oh no,
people think I am worth $20 million. I am literally living in a condo that predates 1976 right now, and I just panicked going, oh God, she's gonna raise my rent again in December. How am I going to afford this? Like, because it is truly incredible. And like, and also, and I just also want to say, agents can negotiate more. Usually you'll get
minimums
base
when we
plus
say
10. Yeah. You'll usually get base plus 10. That is what people are doing now, is base plus 10%. So the 10% does go to your agent. But what people also don't realize is, yeah, you might be making $995 a day, 12 hours a day. How much of that goes to your reps besides the 10%? If you have a manager, if you have an attorney, if you have a business person, if you are that level, how much of that is going to the business expenses you have to do, like headshots, like acting classes, like signing up for this is the biggest scam, the casting websites.
Oh yeah.
I just
Patrick and I know all about those from the directing side of things.
Yeah, let me tell you, I just had to pay $22 to upload a minute-long commercial voiceover demo reel on breakdowns. I paid that last night, $22. So, and you're not even including taxes. So really, people don't realize that those who are really affected by the health insurance stuff with SAG, these are people like, I'll give an anecdote here. Two of my very good friends that I've known for years and years in the digital space, Paula and Charlie, they are both married. They have 2 young boys under the age of 5. Charlie had to sit down with Paula after the health insurance stuff and go, I have to start taking local jobs again. I have to risk everybody's health and fly to Chicago, fly to Atlanta, because he works local hire in Chicago, Atlanta, and everything. And I mean, that was a hard choice a lot of people had to make before vaccinations were available, is, am I willing to expose my family? And I'm sure this happened with IATSE, because we know here in LA in December with the spike, they made film and TV essential work.
Yeah.
And people were getting
I think
sick.
that's really important thing to mention is The state of California mandated, because the entertainment industry is such a big a part of the economy in Los Angeles, in the county, and just the entire state in general, we were essential workers that entire time. There were a lot of promises made when the industry kicked back up again about shorter work hours, about safer work hours, and a lot of procedures were put in place. There was an entire new department created with COVID compliance. There's a lot, the white papers came out that were a collaboration between the DGA, IATSE, SAG, and I think the PGA was involved as well.
PGA was involved, yeah.
To mandate safer working environments, to limit transmission. For the Chapman students that are listening to this, the white papers are what your procedures for SAG protocols are based on. And me and although I was not part of the grad student council last year, myself, I consulted with them, and they worked very, very hand in hand with the university after the initial ones released to make sure they made sense from a student perspective, because obviously we operate differently, and there were some things they didn't handle the way I felt they should have been. But overall, we didn't have any cases as far as I know last year, which is great. And I want to briefly define a couple of the terms you used, Kylie, just specifically for those students and stuff. So playing as a local, that basically, what that means is you're willing to travel to a distant location. So for example, I'll use myself in my PA career. I was based in Detroit. I would get a call from my DGA first AD on a SAG IATSE film that was millions of dollars and may or may not have starred a major Marvel star. And the production company was not willing, even though I was their go-to key set PA. I had to find my own housing and put myself up, and I was not getting any sort of like per diem to account to the fact that I was not working from my own home. I had to act like a local in order to get that job. Thankfully, my direct bosses actually set it up so I was never out of pocket for any of those things, because I was very lucky and in a fortunate position. But that's something that for PAs and lower level ADs in the DGA happens all the time. You will be asked to go work by your bosses somewhere where you do not live. We're not just talking outside the LA zone, but we're talking states away in third area. And you're expected to put yourself up in order to maintain your relationship with that team. It also happens with some of the other lower level IATSE positions we've mentioned. I know for sure I have friends that are art department coordinators that have done that repeatedly. And you do it in the hopes of it paying off eventually, right? You do it because you have bosses hopefully looking out for you, hopefully making it a little bit better. And also, much like how we were talking about the minimum rates for SAG, when we're talking about these rates for IATSE, those are all minimums also. So it is well within the power of these studios and production companies to actually pay people more. It's not a cap on wages. It's a minimum basic standard, because that's the point of a union, is to make sure people are getting minimum living wages and fair treatment. But that doesn't mean that it's never made sense to me when I was PAing on, literally a $200 million movie, and I was making $150 a day or less because I was a local in Detroit and our minimum wage in Michigan was lower. And then they were paying the quote unquote staff PAs that they had traveled from Los Angeles, but made work as locals. They were being paid more. Granted, there was a little bit of a hierarchy that's involved there, but had that movie been shot in Los Angeles, everyone would have been paid more. And simply because they chose to film it on location in Michigan, the film I'm referring to was actually the last film shot under the Michigan tax incentive, which unfortunately no longer exists. But they absolutely had the ability to pay everyone more than their minimums. But other than the recognizable, star DP, star actors, if you were a local hire, you were getting the minimum rate, even though they had money to throw around on everything.
Yeah.
It's truly wild how I've personally, when I was doing contracts as a second AD, I wasn't DGA, but pretty much everything, no, literally everything I worked on as an AD was SAG. So I know those rules quite well. I never, ever for a day player filled out a contract for them that was above a minimum rate.
Yeah.
Ever.
And here's the thing, and for the students that are out there listening, I really wish I could say that SAG could get a hold on that. They haven't, unfortunately now. And I have to say I was very I want to also acknowledge that everything I say is coming from a place of privilege, because obviously I had the support and the financial ability to be able to start my career as a kid. My first job was a local hire. I was in Los Angeles and I had to work out of New York, actually out of Pennsylvania. And for the movie Pizza with Ethan Embry, I was a local hire. They did give me per diem, and I had one hotel for my mom and I, one hotel room, because obviously, even though I could work as an adult, as a 16-year-old, because I tested out of high school, legally, I still needed a chaperone on set. And of course, my mom is an angel and saint and let me, basically, she was not a horrible like stage mom, that stereotype. If anything, she would drop me off at an audition and then just wait. Like,
shout out
not
to
even
the
there.
good stage parents also.
Yes.
Honestly, some of the parents I've met have been the most amazing, supportive, like allies to crew I have ever met, because like a parent that gets it and isn't taking advantage of their kid and is like looking out for them sees what happens to the crew. And I've had parents of like pretty well-known child actors go to bat for me, my production assistants, and like really stick up for people. It's
Let me tell you, I am very grateful. And my mom absolutely did that on Pizza, because it was a modified SAG low budget movie for $250,000. So everybody,
I know that budget level very well.
Yes. So
it's a time.
moderate low, and that was the old DV 100. That just aged me. So great. But unfortunately nowadays, because of the way SAG has handled contracts for local hires, and studios don't want, I'll say this, if you're in LA or New York and you are starting out as an actor, you're not going to get very far. I will say that, because everything is now shooting on location. And I will use my own home state, Oklahoma, because my dad went to high school and college with the former Oklahoma Film Commission head. So I actually know all of this, and I actually know the head of the Tulsa Film Office. Oklahoma has become such a big film industry that Tulsa has its own film office.
That doesn't surprise me coming from
especially
from
with
my background.
Reservation Dog. Oh yeah, and especially with Reservation Dogs, with Minari, a lot of places start, because Oklahoma offers a 35% tax incentive, and if you use Oklahoma artists for your music, you get an extra bonus. So you can actually get a 37% tax credit from Oklahoma.
Filing that for later information.
Yeah, honestly, think about that one. Speaking from since I know now everybody running all the Oklahoma and Tulsa film stuff, great people to work with. However, for an actor, they are going with local hire, so they're not going to. And with the way the zones are, I have been asked if I want to get a New Mexico agent, because Oklahoma, even though it's a big film office, they don't really have agencies. Everybody gets cast out of either casting calls, big casting calls, or New Mexico or Texas. That's how they get their casting in Oklahoma. And that's the same thing with a lot of places. So Atlanta has actually become too saturated with local hires.
Same way with crew. Like, this is so similar to how crew set up. There's I think that's something that's important to mention is because of very similar union structure, in terms of like having two big branches for East Coast and West Coast, but then like kind of the piecemeal way the rest of the country is set up. That's part of what the problem is like,
Yeah.
it's not intentionally designed to divide crew or actors from each other, but just the way, like literally the sprawl of the country, the way that each of the unions are broken down into all these locals. The DGA is not a union. I really want to emphasize that. The DGA is legally not a union. They are not recognized by the AFL-CIO.
CIO.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As a union, because legally the DGA is considered management. So they do not
WGA
have,
West is the same way
Yeah.
also.
yeah.
So
And
I just
so
wanna
there's
clarify
some
that.
weird, that's another thing that I think is really hard when students are, or people just entering the industry without film school. Thankfully, film schools do kind of go over some of this, but it's so nuanced and confusing. I think it often can go one ear and out the other. But that's what gets so complicated here, is that breaking up of all this labor of like, okay, well, if you want to shoot, I'll use myself as an example. Let's say I want to like go shoot my slasher movie in Oklahoma, which, Kylie, let's talk about that.
Yes.
I think that's a plan.
Mhm. Oh yeah, you and I will be.
Yeah. You and I know, are like cooking so many things in our heads.
Oh
just
yeah, we're
lately.
working on a lot of different things. So.
Yeah. And I, you know, if I want to go shoot there, I'm going to be looking at a third area agreement for SAG, but I'm going to have to cast out of other states and cast out of New York and LA for my leads. Then I'm going to have to deal with DGA both locally and nationally, because there's a mandate from the DGA that you have to hire a local second. And only then, if you can't find one, can you go and hire someone from out of town, and you're probably going to have to make them play as a local because production doesn't want to pay for it. Then you have to deal with IATSE and that local, which is going to be under, it's the same across all three of these different guilds we're talking about for on-set work. So DGA, SAG, and IATSE, they have areas of New York, LA, and then everything in between is piecemeal, but still covered under one contract.
Point of information question, Danny, because
Yeah.
I don't actually know exactly, like obviously with DGA, I know SAG and WGA, because for those listening, there's WGA East, which is in AFL-CIO, and WGA West. With IATSE locals, does that also divide up into regions as well, like SAG? So there are
Yeah.
locals as well. Okay, I have to be really honest. I did not know on that, so thank you for answering
That's
that. And that
part of the conversation that's like going on right now, with which I touched on kind of at the beginning of things right before you joined us, is technically what's on the table in terms of contracts is the basic area agreement, which would cover New York and LA. What hasn't been negotiated at all, because traditionally they just defer to that basic agreement, is the area agreement, which covers literally the rest of the country. So
Okay.
ironically, in the DGA, we call it third area. IATSE loosely calls it that, but for third area, you know, there is no contract on the table right now with the AMPTP. It's
gotcha.
so right now, if the third area locals of IATSE were rallying together, they could legally and potentially should legally all be striking today.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the opposite happened, which was when the contract negotiations stalled, the Hollywood local, the 13 Hollywood locals, went to all the third area locals and said, will you sign a strike authorization in solidarity with us? But it's not really going the other way. It's not like,
Gotcha.
and a lot of that has to do with how sprawled out things are. And IATSE, it should be mentioned. So we talked about how SAG-AFTRA covers multiple parts of entertainment. So does IATSE. IATSE covers stagecraft. So in Michigan, just off the top of my head, I can think of 3 IATSE locals, one for Detroit, which predominantly is film and television and commercial, but it also covers places like the Fox Theater that do all the Broadway shows. But we're not like in like the teams don't cross over, but it's the same local that has these diverse interests within it. And then you have a mid-Michigan one, which covers, you know, Lansing, and also Michigan State, where they have the Wharton Center, which is like the biggest Broadway show theater in all of Michigan. I grew up being heavily involved with that because of some family members who are also like, who got me into labor and stuff. And then you have Grand Rapids on the other side of the state, which is, again, the same deal. Like, it's this weird hodgepodge of theater, commercial, television, and film. And you have all these different interests, different contracts, different rates. And then you multiply that by every other state in the country outside of Hollywood and New York City. That's where you get over 60,000 members, and where you get such divergent opinions on what's going on and how to like go forward from here. And I kind of want to bounce back to you because of that, because like it's just there's so many moving pieces with that. It's overwhelming for me to talk about, let alone trying to like know a way forward with it. Oh, mute.
Oh, you're muted, Fee. You're muted.
That I'm
Last time I
specifically
tried
talking
before.
about ratification process, because it's not a direct vote. It's this hybrid electoral college system.
Yep.
And like the ballot process, I think, is really it needs a majority of the 300. There's 385 total delegate votes that are involved to ratify the basic agreement.
Yep. I feel like talking about the different areas that like losing my voice for some reason. I wish that our unions treated themselves and thought of themselves as unions the way other industry unions are. The fact that ours are a little bit more like guilds in like a classical sense means that they don't really stop to consider the collective bargaining power in a very serious way, like, because we could be a literally unstoppable force. Like,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
literally.
Oh, absolutely.
If you stop separating East and West and all of that, and like everybody works together, it's like, cool, studios, have fun filming something without us. We have you over a barrel. Give us what we want. It could be really straightforward, but we always the membership and like the way that things are splintered and the way that people get so preoccupied with like infighting, and not just putting like the IATSE altogether foot down, is just very frustrating to watch time and time again. Like, breaks my heart a little every time.